Welcome back to Ben 10 again, where we watch Ben 10 again. Today we're on number 4, titled Permanent Retirement. Wait. Permanent retirement. It's a permanent retirement. It's a mad environment. Just you wait. Just you wait. Anyways, we open on the rust bucket at an ice cream shop. Grandpa Max stands at an ATM doing ATM things when a dude who looks like a copy-paste of Captain Shaw from the last episode steps up and tosses him out of the way. Inside the shop, Ben and Gwen ponder the flavors, and then Gwen asks for something quite unreasonable and is basically told, piss off and eat napkins. Ben then sees the trouble brewing outside and he chooses the flavor of vengeance. The ignorant hillbillies outside hook a cable up to the ATM and, the bucktooth butthole who's about to try and drive off with it gets a jump scare from Upgrade. He's a galvanic mechamorph. Basically, he can copy or improve any piece of machinery he touches, hence the name Upgrade, and gotta say, this is a decent introduction to this one, especially since we didn't actually see Ben turn into him. Galvanic mechamorph. I'm starting to wonder if Gray Matter and Upgrade are on the same list on purpose. Upgrade takes over the truck and kicks Bucktooth to the curb. Then the one that looks like Captain Shaw starts flinging a chain around trying to attack Upgrade with it, but, Upgrade's tougher than he looks. He grabs it and whips the dude into the ground, and then Grandpa Max walks up and stands on his chest, kind of taking the credit a little bit, but he tells Ben good job. Ben says that he can handle anything, but Max immediately calls his bluff by saying they're headed off to Aunt Vera's. And then, it's not hero time, but theme song time. He's slimy, freaky, fast and strong, he's every shape and size, he's Ben 10, Ben 10. Anyway, Ben whines about how far away Aunt Vera lives and how boring it's gonna be, but Gwen seems kind of excited. She seems to be a fan. We see Aunt Vera. She basically looks like Grandpa Max in a dress, but she works it. She's talking to one of her neighbors, who then goes inside, and we see the neighbor get consumed by some sort of creature, and then it cuts away. We cut back to the rust bucket, and Ben is still complaining about how bored he's gonna be, but he changes his tune pretty quickly when out the window he sees an old person do a backflip off their roof. But as usual, he's the only one who sees the odd thing until it's too late. Team Tennyson exits the rust bucket, and Ben changes tact a little bit and starts complaining about the heat instead, so Gwen sprays him with a water gun and runs off. The neighbor that we saw get munched on earlier stares creepily out his window, and when Ben looks back, he makes just a gut-curdling animal scream and cracks his neck like a monster. Max warns the kids to watch their cheeks because Vera's a pincher, and it takes about half a second for him to be proven absolutely correct. They go inside Aunt Vera's house, typical old lady looking house, and Ben, good Lord, is still complaining about how bored he's gonna be, and how hot it is, and now the smell! Jesus Christ, Ben. They sit down to eat, and it's immediately obvious that the love of weird foods must be a family thing, because Vera has made a very disturbing Jell-O. It's got meat and vegetables in it. No, thank you. Vera asks Ben what he's been up to. He gives her a 100% truthful answer, and she laughs in his face. Gwen admires some dead birds, and also wins some brownie points for knowing what the dead bird is called, and how it sounds. She's a big old bird nerd. Ben takes this opportunity to dump his disgusting Jell-O onto Gwen's plate, and congratulate himself a little bit, and then Vera plays kind of a mean trick on him by offering him candy that turns out to be coffee beans. Jesus Christ, maybe she's a monster too. Ben suddenly decides he has to be anywhere else, so he rushes off to the bathroom, which, that's a good excuse. I can't imagine what that Jell-O would do to your stomach. He's so desperate to get away that he activates the Omnitrix, and we get a reusable Sailor Moon transformation sequence, and he turns into Ghost Freak. First appearance. Ghost Freak is an ectoneurite, which is basically an alien ghost, and he's got all sorts of stuff to unpack, but fortunately he gets his own episode, so we're going to do that there. As a ghost, he can go intangible, so he can go through walls. But first, before he escapes, he cannot resist giving Gwen a little jump scare. Once outside, Ghost Freak, still invisible, steals a golf cart and confuses the crap out of some old people. And in classic cartoon fashion, he's lured towards a pie with the smell lines. In the midst of his pie thievery, he gets a shock of his own when he sees an old lady inside the house chasing a fly, jump up onto the ceiling, and eat it. She then flips back down onto the floor and does a neck crack that makes me equal parts jealous and nauseous. Ghost Freak turns to leave, and he sees the same creepy old guy from before. Guess his name's Marty, apparently. He's got a rolled-up rug in the back of his golf cart, and he's driving away, and then goes way out of his way, very dangerously, to avoid some water. That might be important. Ghost Freak follows him to this sort of dump area where he gets even creepier and Mr. Fantastic's his legs to get over a fence, and then he scoots a dumpster and reveals some sort of trap door. Ghost Freak barely makes it through the fence before the Omnitrix times out, and at the sound and the flash, Marty turns around. But only his head. He snaps his body around to match, gives just a horrible shriek, and then sprints at Ben. Ben sprints away, barely makes it over the fence ahead of him, and gets to his golf cart. It's a miracle. But as he's driving away, Marty makes it over and chases after him. He stretches his arm out and grabs a hold of Ben's cart, but Ben grabs a golf club out of the very convenient bag next to him and smacks the hand, but it just turns into a puddle of goo. Ugh. After a medium-intensity golf cart chase, Ben finally manages to shake him off by totaling the golf cart. Marty is still up and chasing Ben, but he's saved by a conveniently timed sprinkler. Again, they seem to hate water. Ben rushes back to Aunt Vera's house to tell everybody what he's seen, but Grandpa and Gwen start shushing him because Aunt Vera's an old person and has already gone to bed. Ben continues expositing anyway, but Gwen just yells at him for ditching Aunt Vera. Ben's one-track mind is already on busting down Marty's Dora's forearms, but Grandpa says this may warrant investigation, but only if Ben will stay Ben. Team Tennyson casually breaks into Marty's house, but they don't end up finding anything except for the spot where his rug should have been. Back at Vera's, Max decides it's bedtime, and he will not hear any arguments against it. And then we see Aunt Vera get sort of wrapped up by another creature in her sleep. The next morning, Ben digs through the fridge for snacks, but all he finds is 3 gallons of prune juice? Jesus. Old people. Aunt Vera comes out, and something is obviously wrong with her. She looks all blank and robotic, and then she just absolutely abuses Ben's cheeks. Gwen seems to have had the sweet thought to make Aunt Vera some coffee, but in a weird random fit of clumsiness, she tips her tray over, spilling coffee and water on the floor, and Aunt Vera flips out and does a mega split to stay above the liquid. She's clearly a monster now, and then she demands that Gwen cleans it up. Gwen starts wiping it up and she apologizes, but Vera only seems to be interested in where Max went, and when told he went on a walk, she follows him. Ben declares that Aunt Vera must be one of them, and probably some other people too, and for once, Gwen does not argue with him. Ben and Gwen start sneaking through an army of old people trying to get to the trapdoor that Ben saw earlier. We see Vera check in with Marty about the food supply. He informs her that they are almost done gestating. And then he asks about the kids, and she replies, "Too chewy." Ugh. It's people, you guys. They're eating people. Marty, however, doesn't seem interested in eating Ben. He just wants to murder him because he knows too much. Ben and Gwen almost make it to their goal when they're attacked by 2 old women playing shuffleboard. That's a real sentence. After a narrow escape, they run into Grandpa Max, but instead of being a relief, it turns out to be more terror because he has been turned as well. They run again and end up surrounded by old people, some of whom chuck a car at them. They manage to dodge, and Max gets squished, but not really because he turns into goo and then reforms, just missing an eye. Gwen puts in maximum effort, but she can't quite scoot the dumpster off the trapdoor, so Ben gives the Omnitrix a good thwap and turns into Wild Mutt. Wild Mutt easily lifts the dumpster and chucks it at the old people, and then he makes some Wild Mutt noises at Gwen, which she apparently understands. She opens the trapdoor, and then Wild Mutt scoops her onto his back and they hop down the hole. They find themselves in a cavern, but they continue inward because the old people are starting to crawl down the walls as well. They stop when they reach a point where the tunnel splits off in several directions. Wild Mutt sniffs out Not Grandpa just in time to whip him away from snagging Gwen. Not Grandpa gives Wild Mutt a bit of a beating, but then Wild Mutt gives it right back. Not Grandpa tricks Wild Mutt into backing off for a second, and then he delivers a sweet spin kick right into his sweet orange face. Gwen finally thinks to point out that these are aliens that look like people, not the actual people that they look like. Wild Mutt gives Not Grandpa a healthy tackle, and then flees down the path that he sniffs to be correct, with Gwen barely holding on. The Omnitrix starts singing its sad, sad song, and Wild Mutt manages to smash through a barrier before becoming Ben again. Ben insists that he smelled something a little further on, so they continue down the tunnel, and they come to a big opening where there's a ship and a ton of pod-looking things. They find Grandpa's pod first and free him. A bunch of the creatures show up and assume their true forms. This causes Gwen to back into the ship, which causes it to open, I guess. The ship is full of more pods, including Aunt Vera, and when the aliens see that their ship is open, they go into murder mode to protect their feast of flesh. Ben makes a bad pun, and then Sailor Moons himself into Heat Blast and blasts them with a torrent of flames, but this does absolutely nothing. The aliens, evidently called Limaxes, morph into one giant blob and then tell Heat Blast that he has in fact goofed because they love the heat. While Heat Blast distracts the big Limax by playing Ragdoll, Gwen and Max rush to get all the pods off the ship. However, at some point it notices them and it squeezes two little Limaxes out of its back. Ugh. A last-second dodge saves Gwen, but destroys her backpack, causing her water gun to fall out, and when the Limaxes see that, they freak out. She picks it up with this fog-smucking grin and sprays them with it, and that apparently destroys them, so neat. She relays this information to Ben, who just happens to see a water pipe above them in a cave. He blasts a hole in it, causing like a nice little rain to come down in the room. The Limax melts into a puddle and seems to be dead, but as Max pulls the last pod off of the ship, a little piece of it sneaks away and boards the ship. It sort of seems like that might be a setup for later, but as far as I know, we never see these guys again. Max suggests putting everyone back in their own condos so that they don't know that anything happened, and Heat Blast says that if they give him a few minutes, he's sure Accelerate can help. Great plan, but like, how are they supposed to know where everybody lives? Anyway, I guess it works, because we cut to the next scene and everything is back to normal. Aunt Vera says goodbye to Team Tennyson and even gives Gwen a sweet parting gift of another disgusting Jell-O. She apologizes to Ben for the boredom, but in a moment of actual growth, he says that he actually had fun. And there's also a moment where you think she might remember the alien nonsense, but she's just humoring his comment from earlier. The Rust Bucket departs, and then we get a shot of the Limax goo again in the cave, wiggling around, but like I said, I don't think they come back, so guess we'll find out. And then, roll credits! So, with the first appearance of Upgrade and Ghost Freak, that puts us up to all 10 of the original playlist. That's neat. That does, however, mean that they're going to be coming few and far between until we get to Alien Force, but it's always a nice surprise. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying this half as much as I am, at least, and do the things, and I'll catch you next time.